Hi guys, and big welcome to a powerhouse, a cEDH deck tech video of Narset Enlighted Exile, a jeskai graveyard orientated commander. Now she's a 4 CMC 1 blue, red, white, mana cost commander. Legendary creature human monk 3/4. Creatures you control have prowess. But the big thing here is, whenever she attacks, you may exile target non-creature non-land card with a mana value less than her power from any graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This gives you a crazy good rebuild plan. Like you can try to go for your combo. If it's counterspelled, you can attack and try to cast it again. But you also gain a really good setup with intuition. So you will search out these 3 cards, the Unwell Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze, and your opponent is probably gonna give you the Lion's Eye Diamond. Now Unwell Breach and Brain Freeze are in your graveyard and you can't get them into play. But then you just cast attack with your commander and cast your Unwell Breach from the graveyard. This more or less makes intuition into a 1-card combo for your commander. Pretty simple and clean. But you can cast an opponent's Adnos that they have in their graveyard as well. So you need to counterspell that Adnos and then you need to attack with your commander. Or well, you also need to cast 2 non-creature spell to trigger prowess twice. So you have the power of 5 to cast without paying its mana cost. But it also means that you should probably try to build the deck with a lower CMC count so that if you resolve an Adnos, you're able to execute it. Like you could accidentally put a lot of 5 CMCs, 4 CMCs in the deck and make your Adnos that you've stolen a little bit harder to resolve and dig deep. But the same thing can be said about Tainted Pact. That is also a card you could steal from one of your opponent's graveyards. And because of this, you should try to build your deck so you're able to actually execute it. So never include more than 2 basic lands inside this deck, and if you're doing that, add one that is snow covered and the one that isn't snow covered. So this commander is now offering some combo potential, but also a form of value engine, right? I mean, we can cast a Ponder and then attack and cast a Ponder again for extra value, right? Well, yes. But cEDH is fast and often over around turn 2 to turn 3. And that just ultimately means that you're not usually gonna get that many attacks in a game with this commander. Now you're usually gonna get it into play something around turn 3, turn 2, so that might be a little bit too late. Like, get this into play and then cast a Ponder, and then the game could start to be a bit over. Now, some games absolutely go longer. It's not that. There's just a tendency to be quite fast. And when the game goes longer, this absolutely will be a value engine. It's just not a great one. It's just that this commander excels in the part where it's rebuilding and stealing a combo. Now, one of the main combos are gonna be the SPELLSEKER 1-card combo. I have made a video explaining this one, link in the description below of the video and up there in the top right corner, if you want to take a look in detail how this combo actually works and how it plays out. And also if you want a more detailed explanation about the Freeze Breach combo, link in the description below as well. But we could also go for the mono-red Twin Flame Heat Shimmer dual cast mage combo. Cast Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer targeting something. Then in response to that, hold priority, cast dual cast mage and target the spell on the stack. The spell on the stack will never resolve. The dual caster mage will create a token and resolve that targeting dual caster mage. Here, you will sit and infinitely create tokens of Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer and infinitely create dual caster mage tokens that can attack and win the game. Now you could go and be a little bit strange and start to include Snoop combos, but that's just weird. You want to include a lot of instance and non-creature card in this deck, because that's how this commander operates. And Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer are like decent cards that you could have in your graveyard, because if there is a Dockset in play and you have a Twin Flame in your grave, you can cast Twin Flame and make a copy of that Dockset Extortionist that some of your opponents have on the battlefield. So the cards will like synergize and do something with the commander outside of the combo, but still be able to perform a combo as well. But you're still sitting pretty fine. We have a lot of really powerful jeskai combos here. And by the way, if you don't have access to your commander currently, find Sevin's Reclamation with Intuition. You normally leave Brain Freeze out in this case, and you can use the Sevin's flashback cost to get Unwell Breach from the graveyard into play here. So the game plan is pretty clear and simple. Keep an opener with a lot of mana and a lot of speed. This is, for example, a great opener. If we're not a starting player, we have a Gemstone Caverns, and if you get used to Gemstone Caverns, you usually pitch something like Mystical Tutor here, or maybe the Chromox. But then before your turn you can cast a Lightning Tutor for Rhystic Study, and then on your turn put another land into play, and either the Mox Diamond or the Chromox, and suddenly, boom, you have a turn 1 Rhystic Study. That's really good. This is not a hand you want to keep. Now you have Serum Visions, and you want to have Serum Visions like in your graveyard for your commander, but you don't have an acceleration, you don't have a way to get your commander into play that fast enough. So this is definitely something you're gonna pitch. And here we have a Mana Crypt, and a Smothering Tide, and a Draenei Magistrate, and a Preordain. So you have something like a turn 1 Preordain, Mana Crypt, and a land, or you have a Mana Crypt, land, and Draenei Magistrate, and then on your second turn, boom, a Smothering Tide, and then you can start to develop forward. Like you have Frantic Search and Preordain to fill your graveyard, cast your commander with the mana from Smothering Tide, and start accumulating value slowly. This hand is lacking lands, and it's lacking acceleration. Now you're pretty much all in the Brainstorm here, so this is something you probably have to mulligan. Same thing here, only one land, and you could accidentally get stuck. Pitch this hand. Same thing here, you have a Mystical Tutor, but that's the only thing you can actually cast. You could also get stuck with this hand too. If you've mulliganed down really heavily, this is probably something you should keep, because with the Phantasmal Image, you can get some form of value. If someone is putting a very early Tymna or Crom into play, then you can turn 2 get that commander yourself. But also like turn 3, you have a Rhystic Study, which is really slow, like you're dreaming to top deck a Mana Crypt here. But if this is like your first 7, this is something you maybe could mulligan. If this is a lower hand, this is something you keep. I hope that gave you some form of idea of what to do with your mulligans. But afterwards you basically play a interactive value game of sorts, depending on what you have in your hand and how the game is flowing. But the ultimate destination is to combo off with some form of a breach outlet. Now in the description below of this video, as always, you can find a decklist link to my decklist if you want to see card by card in detail. Now you might be skeptic about Elsha of the Infinite. The answer is really simple. Moxfield hasn't been updated yet. They haven't really added this card currently. So Elsha is currently here, but once they've added Narset Enlighted Exile, I'm gonna update it and change it. We have 12 creatures, 12 sorceries, 28 instants, 14 artifacts and 4 enchantments, and 29 lands. I also added a Hall of the Bandit Lord. This is an outlet to give your commander haste. Now in this format we have cards like Lightning Greaves and Anger, cards that can give your commander haste. Usually really popular cards. I don't personally like them, and the reason is that they're kinda only good when you have a commander in play. There's nothing wrong about them, but they demand a more commander-centric, so to say. And a deck is usually really strong when it doesn't really need its commander, when you can play the game perfectly without the commander. And jeskai can absolutely do that. But Hall of the Bandit Lord is just a land, it's not that much of a commitment. However, this comes into play tapped and pays for colorless mana, so there's definitely a world where you don't include this. In the end, you do you, and you can build this deck with a lot of variations. Two other cards I wanna mention here that are also a little bit weird are Dreadhorde Arcanist and Keldon Flame Sage. Now in general, these two cards are not the best, also not terrible. Once again, they function on the flow of attacking in a format that is really fast. You don't get that much value from them because they're just too few turns in general inside this format. You usually want value engines that can do things on trigger currently, that can do more than just one thing during the turn cycles. Like even a tiny Esper Sentinel can draw up to 3 cards in one turn cycle. But they are somewhat close to what your commander are doing. They are like tiny versions of your commander. However, they are kinda limited when you don't have your commander in play, because Dreadhorde Arcanist only has a power of 1, and Keldon Flame Sage usually has a power of 3, because you usually have another 1/1 in play. However, these two cards actually get really good when you have your commander in play, because creatures you control have prowess. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, these creatures' attacks will increase, and that will increase their capability of doing more value for you. And as I'm someone that playtests cards to experiment and see what works and what doesn't work, I'm playing them for the experimental reason. So more or less what I'm trying to say is that don't blindly copy this list. Well, you could if you want to, but I'm experimenting with a few cards in here, because that's just what I normally do. Now we have talked a lot about the problems with not having that many attacks. Well, a card that I kinda wanna highlight here is Final Fortune. Take another turn after this one, you lose the game at the end of that turn. That's a problem. But it doesn't really matter if you're going to win on that next turn. With this you could get 2 Narset attacks and 2 Narset triggers to cause 2 different things from 2 different or from the same graveyard. But you also get like an untap effect and you get to draw a card. Now there are more versions to Final of Fortune, like Last Chance, Sorcery. Take an extra turn after this one, at the beginning of the next end step you lose the game. And you could absolutely include more if you want to. That actually might be the more correct thing to do, instead of having these Dreadhorde Arcanist in your deck. But it kinda showcased that you can build your deck a little bit more differently, like having Last Chance in your deck increases your combo speed, while Dreadhorde Arcanist is increasing your value engine capacity. So once again, you do you. I believe in you. Now before we wrap this video up, I have one final strange card to show you, and that is Chandra's Ignition. This is a 5 mana cost. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. What? So first off and foremost, you don't actually need an outlet for your Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond combo. All you need to do is just mill out all of your opponents, keep like 10 cards in your own deck, but mill out all of your opponents, and then you just pass turn and let them die at your end step when they try to draw a card for turn. This doesn't always work, and you're also letting your opponents untap. So it's not always the most desired finalization. You could also just make them draw a card still on your turn before you pass turn, so that solves that problem. But one thing I'm trying to experiment with here, and I want to emphasize that this is an experiment, is Chandra's Ignition. You see, when you have your Brain Freeze and your Lion's Eye Diamond combo assembled with your Underworld Breach, you're casting a lot of spells. And you're generating a lot of mana, so your finalized outcome could be anything, like a 5 mana cost spell here. But also, Narset Enlighted Exile has prowess. Whenever you cast something, she grows in power. So during the storm run with Brain Freeze and Lion's Eye Diamond, you're gonna increase her power exponentially, and the last spell you could cast could be this Chandra's Ignition to just board wipe all of your opponent's creatures, but potentially also deal enough damage to your opponent's faces as well. Now, I know, that sounds a little bit tricky, but once again, I'm experimenting. You could easily replace this with any form of board wipe or any form of wheel or any form of other outlet for your Underworld Breach Brain Freeze combo. But what I like about it is that it's a board wipe against your opponents. I mean, this deck will struggle against an Archon of Emeria, and a Collector Roof would also be kinda annoying. And Chandra's Ignition, being quite expensive, will still kill all of your opponent's creatures, but leaves yours intact. It's also gonna hurt your opponent's face. Like if there's a Archon of Emeria in play, 5 mana to deal 4 damage to all of your opponent's creatures and all of your opponents is okay. So the way I look at this card is a board wipe and a combo finisher, an outlet after the breach, so to say. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and big thank you Patreons for your support. It really helps out the channel to stay intact. I really think this looks like a fun commander with a lot of really cool potential. And I also think that this is a commander that will have very unique games every single game because of the fact that you can steal cards from your opponents. So depending on what your opponents are doing, you will be doing different things depending on what they have in their grave. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.